And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government. Now, before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. Boy, what more could you ask for, huh? What more could you ask for? To do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. I want to repeat that. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. Good evening, folks. This is Joe Cristiano. Welcome to Liberty Talk Radio. I'll be acting as your chancellor for the University of Logic, better known as Cristiano's Conservatory, correcting convoluted conversation. And that's what we get all week long, folks. You know it, and I know it. We just have to recognize it, filter it out. Even better, let me go one step further. Stop listening. Stop listening and start thinking. Back in the old days, now let me hear all the here we go again.
Oh, mercy.
People didn't have apps to download all day. They didn't listen to music all day, but they gave a lot of thought to the day at hand. To things that were occurring around them, they gave thought. The old story of the farmer, the city slicker coming in to sell the farm or something. And the farmer didn't converse with anyone, didn't know what was going on in the world, and he was considered a country bumpkin. But in fact, he was way ahead of the city slicker trying to sell him something. Because what he did is he deliberated. He gave weight. He gave thought. He said, is this sound? And he maybe mulled over things for long periods of time before a decision was made. We need to do more of that and a lot less listening. Now, I know I'm speaking against myself. You say, Joe, you're a talk show host. How could you say that? It's like, hey, turn off the radio. Hurry up. Turn it off right away. There are certain things we can listen to, but for the most part, we really have to listen to ourselves, and we're not doing that very well. I'm very disturbed at the economy, our form of government, and we're going to talk about our form of government today. We are going to take on a subject that is not very palatable. I'm going to talk about some definitions that are totally misunderstood. Forms of government that we probably should embrace, but if I mentioned them just now flat, you'd probably turn it off. This guy's a madman. We have to start thinking. I was asked to speak to an organization called the Executives of Tulsa, to business people, and they're mostly an older group of men. And it was kind of surprising because I talked about belief systems. And you know how I rant about that. And I very much expected to get a lot of negative responses and questions about that. And after discussing it for a while, I asked if there were any questions. Now, these are older business people, probably very, very, I guess they're fixed in their thought process and what they believe in, whatever. And I thought it didn't rub them the wrong way, and it surprised the heck out of me. So I said, do you have any questions? Guy raises his hand, he says, I have a question about Bitcoins. And it just floored me. Could you imagine that? Talking about,
Bitcoin,
Bitcoin, yeah.
Wow.
And I thought he'd say, well, you're a nutcake. What the hell? Who the hell invited you here? And yet they seem to have understood what I was saying. And that was gratifying. I went shopping. I was shopping this afternoon. I was the commandant in the house,
Yeah.
She said, V must pick up something. Here are the items we got to pick up for the kids, And so I get relegated going to one of the big box stores and walking around and asking 100 people, do you sell this thing, And what I wound up buying was a crayon molding and melt manufacturing factory.
Oh, not creepy crawlers.
Thing. Yeah. And I bought that, and I had to pick up a couple other things. But I'm standing online, and I just found this very disturbing. I'm just having a lot of trouble with the holidays. The holidays, to me, don't make sense because they're supposed to be one thing, and they're not. They're another. And I'm online, and, of course, I'm the 15th person online. No, I was actually only a 4th person online or so. And the people in front of me, have all sorts of junk and garbage, and they're just unloading it on the table, and it's all junk.
Oh, yeah.
It's just junk. Plastic junk, mostly made overseas. And you think people are sitting here and we don't have that much wealth anymore. We don't have that much cash anymore. We don't have that much disposable income anymore. And yet people are in stores buying junk, stuff that is going to wind up in the trash within a couple of weeks or a couple of months, be given away at garage sales if they can give it away at all, be broken within, maybe within hours.
That morning when they unwrap it.
Yeah, they look at it, and that's the end of that.
Yeah.
And when you think about our economy, because listen, I'm not an economist, but I study economics. I'm a financial guy. I went to Pace College, a prestigious business college. It specializes in accounting and finance. And in fact, I was the job that I had at a college, one of the first jobs I had at a college, is I did financial statement analysis for a multinational corporation to determine whether or not these large companies that we were selling big buck stuff to, I mean, we're talking mega buck stuff to, whether or not they were financially viable to, they would pay us back. So, I know finance. I understand financial statements. I did all this stuff. And, so I'm always thinking in those terms. I'm thinking of, assets versus liabilities and net worth. I mean, it's ingrained in you. I mean, yeah. Anyway, but, and I'm saying, I said, but there's no worth here. There's no assets sitting on the conveyor belt. There's plastic junk. And when you think about our economy and the way they talk about it on television, and by the way, I haven't watched TV in about a week or two. I haven't watched it at all. I just don't watch it at all. I can't stand it anymore. Is that if we don't get out and take whatever monies we have or monies that we do not have and charge it on our credit card, go further into debt to buy this junk, we can place the economy into peril. I mean, just think of that.
Yeah.
If we don't go out and take our hard-earned money, much of which has been earned by people who have service sector jobs selling junk to the other people, recycling it. They'll think about it. It can drive you. Don't think too much. It'll drive you crazy because I've gone absolutely nuts on this right now. So, so you have people who are slaving away. They're slaves. Working at low-wage jobs, either selling fast food or junk, so they can make money, so they can go to another big box store and buy more junk to keep the economy rolling.
Yeah, exactly.
Now listen, I'm no Andy Sutton, economist, as you know, but someone's got to explain that to me. And I just get so angry. We seem to be forced, in a way, psychologically forced, to spend money we don't want to spend on things that we think we know are unnecessary, that have little value to people because it's the time of the year.
Yeah, right.
Now, if this is what Christmas represents, someone's got to redefine.
It's almost like it should be a Christmas obligation.
Yeah. This is Christmas. Buy the kids. And if you don't buy junk and rack up the credit card. Oh boy, our
Something's wrong
economy
with
may
you.
go to heck in a hamper.
And
Boy,
something's wrong with you.
we'll be in trouble. So get out there. And I'm sorry, but I think of this stuff and I go, but there's everything wrong with it. I asked this. I was at a coffee shop, and it was this fellow there that's an elderly gentleman, and he comes once in a while, and his daughter's with him now, and because he can't get around, and she came. She's a very nice gal, and we were talking about how things were going, and she's from Florida, and how things are going over there. And I mentioned something to her. I said, back in the 1930s, people produced. If they went to the store, they may have had 38 cents on them. And when they went to the store, they looked down and they counted every damn penny. And they made sure what they bought was something of value. Dry goods, or something that they needed. And if they needed something that would be a present, it would be something like a sweater because it was cold.
Yeah.
And they were cold,
Practical.
Practical, right. And it's something that was manufactured and most likely in the United States, although that's immaterial at this point. And I said, what is the difference today between a person, and take a homeless person, I don't care who, or a person back in the 1930s whose total wealth is in that purse of 38 cents. In other words, they live in an apartment, right? You don't want to count their clothing and stuff. They have no car. And if you had to take a balance sheet, make a balance sheet up of this person, right? They'd have cash 38 cents, no savings, no car,
Right.
no nothing, right? Net worth 38 cents, right? Now, fast forward to today, you have a person who drives up in an SUV,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Brand new SUV, right? Has a mortgage,
Right.
right? So a student loan, $53,000 that's still outstanding,
At least.
right? And maybe $17,000 to $23,000 on credit cards, right?
Right.
What is that person's net worth?
Negative hundreds of thousands
Yeah,
of dollars.
that's right. It's not unusual to find a person to have a negative net worth well over $100,000. I look at the bankruptcy sometimes, and you see things, assets, $127,000. Liabilities, $4.7 million. I mean, it drives you nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't believe it, right? Now, so my question was this, and folks, I want you to start thinking about this. This is not just talk. I want people to start thinking. Remember, this is the University of Logic, right? I gotta give you a test at the end of the year, right? Which person is worth more, is wealthier? Which person has a higher net worth? The person who had 38 cents to their name during the Depression. Total net worth, 38 cents, or that person of today? This is what I think about. This is why I'm going nuts. This is why I have a radio program. If I didn't have this radio program, I'd explode. Because I gotta talk about this stuff. But, and the thing is, this gal kept on saying, she says, oh, no, but you don't understand, but, and she kept on,
They're making excuses.
I said,
Yeah.
no. Which one? I said, then I went to another level. I said, you got a homeless person, has nothing but a shopping cart. Nothing. All right? And half a bottle of booze. And then you compare that person to the person who's in debt, the $100,000 in debt, right? Which person is worth more? She wouldn't answer the question. She couldn't. She said, well, that's not fair.
Yeah.
I said, why not? I said, it's a financial question. We have a balance sheet on both people. I don't care what their names are. Which person is worth more? And yet, what we do today is we say, well, this person, the SUV, but and we say, oh, look at that poor slob. That person has nothing. Look at the people during the Depression. They had nothing. Folks, they had a heck of a lot more than we have today. Morally and financially, let's take a break. Yeah, I want to hear from you guys. Come on, you guys are listening out there. I usually don't take that many calls because we usually have guests and whatever, and we're jabbering over here.
Well, you made me think, Joe. You made me think that the other day we went to that breakfast where you spoke, and I met a guy who's a financial guy for one of our state, or our federal reps, congressman, and we were talking about information that comes out of the media and with taxes and, income tax, things like that. And he said, well, inflation, the rates of inflation are completely wrong. He said they threw out the cost of food. They threw out the cost of gasoline. And I guess they threw out a couple other things that would, if we took and put those things back in, we would have an enormous inflation rate.
Oh,
so
sure,
no wonder
yeah.
the stock market looks great. No wonder everybody's throwing their money up the stock market like there's no tomorrow. If they had the real facts, they would be worried, and they'd pull their money out.
Yeah, there are two indices. One is the Consumer Price Index, which excludes energy and food, but includes things like refrigerators and houses and stuff like that. Then there's the EPI, which is the Everyday Price Index, which excludes the houses and the refrigerators. No, really, which is logical, but includes energy and food. Now, the problem that we have right now is the EPI is actually down. And why? Because gas was, 6 months ago, was $3.75, and now it's so when that happens, that is such a large component that it actually brings it down. However, food and other items that we use have gone up. Now, the big problem is that there's no anticipation that these other items would go down. There is an anticipation that the price of energy is going up. And already we see things in some of the core metals markets like copper and nickel. They are creeping up slowly but surely. Natural gas is coming up slowly but surely.
Well, food is going up.
Yeah, food is going up.
Oh,
I'm just talking about energy now. But once these start going, energy and metals, the raw materials.
What's going on with the gold prices right now?
Right. Well, right now, it's fascinating. Gold is such a fascinating story. If you look at items of value, they asked this question. I'm not sure if it was this speech or some other speech I gave. They asked, which items are of value? How do you value things? Well, there are several components to that. I mean, palladium, for example, is considered a precious metal.
Oh, sure,
which
yeah.
mostly industrial. It's used in.
It's very expensive.
Well, very expensive. Yeah.
Catalytic converters.
Catalytic converters. In fact, when Russia is the main producer of palladium, when they shut off the palladium supply to the world about 10 years ago, they started putting platinum in the catalytic converters.
Wow.
And we did work in a company that made catalytic converters, and everyone had to be searched when they went in and out. Yeah. Because platinum
just
is more expensive than gold.
Filings they can put in their pocket.
So you have platinum, you have palladium, you have gold, you have silver. And then, of course, you have rhodium, which is very, very rare. We'll leave that one out. But then you have the semi-precious. You have the nickel, and they have the copper. And these are all things of items of value. Why did I bring that up? What were you saying?
Well, I was just saying that the inflation rate, I think, is being tampered with. And that maybe
you asked about the gold price.
Yeah.
And the gold price. That's
the
right.
gold price, yeah.
I'm sorry, folks. My mind went south. But what's really fascinating is that when was the last time you heard anyone say the United States this month bought 31.6 tons of gold?
Haven't heard it.
Never.
Never heard it. Never. Have never heard it. I mean, not in recent thinkable memory.
Who bought that much?
Right? I'm just saying. I'm just using, say, 5 tons, 50 tons, 500 tons. You never hear it. How often do you hear that Russia bought 49 tons of gold? India bought, 126 tons of gold. China bought, the number of tons of gold transferred from the UK vaults to Hong Kong was X number of tons this month. Every single month I read that. Every month. And what we're seeing is
You're kidding me.
Oh, no. I follow this every month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Every single month. It is estimated. We can't get it estimated.
That's
You're not going to believe this.
That's
In
insane.
2013, China will have purchased in the vicinity of between 2,300 and 2,400 tons of gold.
Wow. Man.
Now, folks, I hate to tell you, don't want to surprise you, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of gold.
Yeah.
Now, what happens? He said, well, the price of gold. Who do you think is benefiting by this price reduction? China and India. They're buying it like crazy. They're buying it any way they can. Now, there's two ways that China buys gold. They buy it through Hong Kong, which they get from the West, and then they buy it other sources, and they're one of the world's biggest producers of gold, of which they keep every ounce they produce.
Really?
Now, in the next couple of years, China will have enough gold, in my opinion, this is speculation, where they'll say, by the way, we're going to suggest that the United States currency is no longer the world's reserve currency. We're going to recommend to the UN, the World Council, the IMF, and whomever is going to make this decision, that the yuan becomes the world's reserve currency because it's backed partially or all by gold. Right. Yeah. And are these guys stupid? No. Oh, yeah, they're dumb as a fox. And they're buying this stuff at $1,180 an ounce. They're buying it literally by the ton.
Yeah, so why aren't we buying the gold? Why isn't this country going in?
With what?
Yeah, we have no money to buy.
Too much of our money's going
out
to pay the debt.
We're borrowing money.
Well, Bernanke said everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, but to see if we, no one wants it. You see, no one wants Federal Reserve notes to give up their gold for Federal Reserve notes. They say, no, wait a minute. I'm trying to get rid of my Federal Reserve notes to buy gold.
So why doesn't the United States start printing their own currency instead of using the Federal Reserve?
Oh, yeah. Hey, folks, 855-866-1170. Let me hear from you. 855-866-1170. The question before you is, why does not the United States print its own money? Why do we buy it from the Rothschilds?
It's a private banking cartel.
Why do we buy it from the banking cartel? There are only 3 countries in the world that don't belong to the banking cartel. And they're very good friends of ours. Let me name them for you. North Korea, Iran, and Cuba. Our 3 closest allies. Yeah. And I wonder why we're at war with those people all the time. I mean, it's amazing how that works. Folks, I want everyone to turn off the TV, only listen to 1170 KFAQ, and especially this program. And I want you to start thinking, and I want you to start taking inventory of who you are as a person, who you are as a citizen. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to talk about a form of government that you're going to find very unpalatable. But I want to explain it to you of what this country was originally intended to be. Something you won't hear in American history books because they're all gobbledygook. The real books they don't give out anymore. I want people to start thinking. When I ask a question, who's worth more money? The person with 38 cents in their pocket or the person who owes $127,000? I want someone to say, well, all that being equal, unless there's something else, obviously the person... I don't want people to say, well, you don't understand it. And that's the way we think as Americans. We cannot even think anymore. And when I stood there I was at Walmart buying this crayon manufacturing, melting, molding, stupid thing, right? And I stood there, I said, everyone, all these boxes of crap. It really bothered me.
So why did you buy it?
How could we become the nation that we become back in the 1930s when all we did was produce and not spend? And now all we do is spend and we don't produce. Let's take a break. What if we embraced the true spirit of Christmas? And instead of going out and everyone running around like mad people buying junk at the last minute and just exhausting themselves, is that I got a call from a good friend today. I mean, some people are just wonderful, unlike the people in this room here.
Well,
all right.
Spill it. What do you got to share?
Listen, you only hurt the ones you love. You know that.
That's right.
Yeah, be nice.
I'm sorry. I'm just terrible that way. I do this all the time.
Little zing.
Yeah, we love you too, Joe.
And
Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah, and whatever.
Yeah, all that stuff.
She had helped us with the house, fixing some stuff in the house, and we took some cabinets out and replaced some cabinet doors, and she took them. And she said, they were very good cabinet doors. And she says, instead of throwing them, I took them home and I refurbished them. And she made Christmas gifts out of them. I mean, she spent a tremendous amount of time doing that and skill. She's just beautiful work. And she's giving that as gifts. And she called me, and we must have stayed on the phone, I bet for about a half hour, 45 minutes. I mean, just being on the phone and speaking with someone who is being open and kind and wanting to speak to you, wanting to spend some time with you, that's a Christmas gift. And we don't do that anymore. Well, families do that. I speak to so many people and say, oh, yeah, well, I got to go. I got to see my brother-in-law. I got to, and they bought me some crap again. I got to return, And I said, this has nothing to do with Christmas. It used to be so much simpler, and now it's just.
Oh, people are even afraid to, recognize the season sometimes.
Yeah.
I said tonight, at a Target store, somebody let us go by, which was very nice. Ann and I just had a couple items, and we were headed out to get her home and then for me to come out here. And she let me through, and they had some bunch of junk. And I said, well, thank you, and Merry Christmas. And they were just kind of like, you're not supposed to say that anymore or something.
Yeah.
But they did the Christmas thing. I mean, they I was surprised. And I was surprised how many stores weren't busy, Joe. You talk about the economy.
Right.
I mean, we found a cashier like that at a Target the weekend before Christmas. What's that? Tell me the economy's wonderful.
Well, here's a good thing. Andy Sutton is my favorite economist. That's why I have him on the show.
Mm-hmm.
The guy's brilliant.
Awesome. He,
you can go and get his
Your
blog. His gets a blog every couple of weeks. It's fascinating. He puts out a newsletter called My 2 Cents. It's fascinating. And most of it's free, and I don't know how he does it and how he writes all this stuff. But he had a graph on his last blog, and it showed that the number of people working part-time at service sector type jobs is up, right? I'm sorry. The employment rate is down, to 7% or something like that. And if you look at the graph, it's going slightly down. Number of people on federal assistance is up, or on food stamps is up. He said, how could you have an improvement
that makes sense,
in employment and then have more people basically on welfare? He said, and he railed on. And it's a real problem today. We focus on, we better go out and spend to help the economy. We've got this thing ingrained in us. What did we do back in the old days when I had a Christmas club? I put $10 a week away. At the end of the year, I had $120, went out, spent $120. The day after Christmas, I owed not a penny to anyone. Everyone had a gift. And usually it was a sweater or something like that, sure, right? Yeah. I mean, it was more practical than it was today. And of course, we splurged once in a while. But that was it. But today, we're in hellacious debt. Then we pile on the debt. And he had another chart showing the amount of debt that's being accumulated. It is skyrocketing. It is consumer debt is well over $3 trillion.
Wow.
My nuts, I put that in my nuts. Can you imagine that amount of money? I mean, it's phenomenal. Gold is seeping out. And then I saw this interview, and I wanted to write the guy's name down. I don't have it, so I apologize. I do not have it, and I can't substantiate it. But he's a big wig with one of the big firms. And he toured the UK gold vaults in Britain. He said virtually empty.
Wow.
And he said he was there a couple of years ago, and he said there was quite a bit of gold there. And he asked one of the people there, says, "Where's the gold?"
And what'd they say?
Shipped to Hong Kong.
Oh.
Most of it goes directly to Hong Kong. Folks, when the U.S. loses its status as the world's reserve currency, brace yourself, because you will be unable to afford all the plastic garbage crap from China. You will be unable to afford it. It will be that expensive.
We'll be forced to make something nice and be kind to people for Christmas again.
This is
Maybe
right.
there's a silver
We will
lining.
be the new China.
Yeah.
Because
We will.
our currency will be so worthless, whatever we make relative to other currencies be cheap. We will become we will once again be making crap here.
Yeah. Well, it'd be like when we were kids, everything that was made in Japan. Japan used to be the China,
Right.
everything next to nothing. You'd
Right.
get it done in China or in Japan. Well, it's going to say USA, and people around the world look and say, yeah, that's that crap from the U.S.
Right, that's right.
Like the little umbrellas that go in the cocktails.
That's right. That's right.
They'll say USA on it.
That's right. Hey, I intended. I'm dragging my feet. We have only about 15 minutes or so, but what I wanted to talk about. I went on the toy run. That's the motorcycle run. Last year, I don't know how many people there were this year. You know how many? About 6,000. Last year there was 6,000.
cool.
We suspect about 6,000 this year. Yeah, my wife's audiology practice, Ranch Acres Audiology, is actually a
Shameless
sponsor.
plug.
So we're right up front.
Oh,
You know,
for
we're
the
right up
sounds of
front.
those Harley Motors
And
stuff,
folks, I get on my motorcycle and I'm in this group of 6,000 motorcycles, this movement. And I'll be honest with you, from the fairgrounds to the Blue Dome District, and they go weaving in and out and whatever, I cannot get the smile off of my face. I can't. I just love it. I cannot, if I try to get the smile, I just love it. And I'm going to tell you why. I want to tell you why. There's this freedom of everyone being on their bike, their way, built the way they want it. No airbags, no government regulators, no government regulation on a motorcycle. There's some, lights and stuff like that. But there's this sense of freedom, and noisy as all get out. And I just love it. And I kept on thinking while I'm riding there to the Blue Dome District, we're right up front, and now my bike is not very loud, but the guys around me were going ba-boom, ba-boom. I just love it, I almost went deaf. I kept on thinking to myself, there's something about anarchy that I just love. I like anarchy. There's something about anarchy. And I said, anarchy can't be all that bad because there's
they've
all these.
redefined it, though.
I'll bet you most of these bikers will go, right on, brother. And yet no one's killing each other. No one's being mean. Everyone's helping each other, Now, we have Tim Hager with us here at the studio. Tim Hager is the brains of the group. I know we're in deep trouble.
I know why, because he doesn't talk all the time. He's thinking.
He's thinking. I'm thinking.
Yeah, so what do you want to know, Joe? What do you
what
want
do
to
you
know?
want
Remember that joke with what's his
Maybe I'll enlighten you or something.
Your money or your life. Your money or your life. I'm thinking. Remember that? Bob Hope. Not Bob Hope, but Jack Benny.
Jack Benny, yeah.
Anyway, Tim, I'm going to give you a sentence about the definition. People think anarchy is people rioting in the street, chaos.
No.
Anarchy is incredibly structured, very well organized, because it's everyone doing what they want to do without any imposition and voluntarily becoming part of a larger group in putting things together. People think that anarchy means that there are no rules.
Or no
That's
order.
not true.
Anarchy is a system of voluntary participation.
Right.
Is what it is. And
Right.
we're in a country right now where we become so homogeneous across the entire 50 states that what we wind up with is no matter where you go, everything's the same. And it's all governed by one large bureaucratic government, okay, that's influencing and enforcing laws across the entire country. So there's no place you can go to go ahead. It's this. Yeah, one time you used to be able to go to the South or say go to Florida, and there was different rules and different ways of living. If you didn't like living there, go somewhere else, and you could. You had the right of free association. You can't do that now.
Yeah.
There's no alternative place to go except to leave the country.
But the big mistake is that people say, well, geez, there's no order. There's no law. There's no rules. No. The problem, what anarchy is that there are rules. There are no rulers.
That's right.
That's the difference.
Well,
and the United States, listen to this. The United States was actually built on anarchy. All of the settlements that came here had no form of government. Now, they did get together at the town hall or their meeting place, if they had a problem.
They worked it out.
And then they all went back and they
did their own thing.
They ruled themselves. In fact,
they trusted people.
Yeah. Now
think about that. They trusted people.
That's right. Here's the shocker. Our Constitution is based on anarchy. Limited government, no rulers. There's no mention of rulers. We have an anarchistic form of government, believe it or not, but no one wants to say it because
we don't have one anymore, though.
No, not anymore. No, that was the intent. But if you say that, people think of guys with AK-47s and burning cars. It's not.
Well, one of the philosophical things about anarchy is that inherent in government is evil.
That's right.
Government actually produces evil.
Right.
So and that's the fundamental premise of anarchy.
So
is
the more
that the state
government
is
you have, the more manipulation and all of that goes on.
You're taking the power and you're putting it in the hands of very few people.
Few people to lord over others.
That's right. And you wind up with a totalitarian government, and all of a sudden you have at any time, anybody can come in and take any kind of freedoms away from you. I mean, just imagine we were living in a country where they had access to all your information, all your communications stored somewhere, okay? And then you went out and said something they didn't like. Well, they can just go digging through those records, okay, and say, oh, look what he said on such and such a day. He's an enemy of the state. I mean, who would want to live in a government like that? Who would want to live in a country like that? It's not like we have that now.
We are living in a government like that.
But tell us more about that, Tim. How do we convince people that, anarchy is not a bad word? How do you convince
they made it a bad word.
I pull up a quote here from George Orwell. He said, until they become conscious, they will never rebel. And until after they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious. So the country really has to be put into a position where people wake up and realize that this spending society that we're in is going to hurt them. But they won't realize that until they feel the pain. And until they feel the pain, they won't wake up. So until they're put into a position where they can say, and there are people in this country that are feeling pain. You're talking about the food lines growing via SNAP and all that kind of stuff. People are being satiated. They're being told everything's okay. I mean, think about it. If everything is going really, really bad and you don't want people to panic, what do? You feed them. You just keep them fed. You tell them everything's okay until a point where it gets so bad that you can't do it. And what do you do then? Well, now all of a sudden you have a reason to go in and institute martial law, okay? But you've got to create a system, an upside down pyramid that has no foundation, that's just barely balancing. But you've got to build that thing up way big. So all this it's like one of those what they call it, false flag. You got to create a false flag situation. Only you've got to make it so big that it's no longer a false flag anymore, and that people will subject themselves to any kind of military rule that anybody else wants to come up with. And so you create your own poison. We're actually prisoners of our own philosophy of spend. And at some point, that prison wall door comes down right on top of us.
And going back to your comment from the beginning of the show, the young lady you were talking about at the coffee shop, as long as we've got a little cash in our pockets, regardless of what the balance sheet looks like, is all well with the world, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I mean, they could have $1.26 in their pocket.
Yeah.
Oh, $127,000. Everything is fine as of right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And see, I can't think that way because I'm a financial guy.
First of all, the government is setting the standard. The government is broke. They're just spending in money they don't have. So everybody in the people that are citizens think, well, I guess that's okay. We'll just do the same thing.
They're keeping people as happy as long as they can.
Yeah, and Bernanke was talking about last week about how, we're not going to issue as many bonds and everything's all well with the world now, right? Yeah, no, it's not.
It's in their best interest.
I was biking with a group this 15 years ago. We went on a long bike ride, and I had invested in a company, and I was a primary investor in a startup company. And we stopped somewhere. I think we were in Cleveland, Oklahoma at the time from Tulsa. We went all the way to Cleveland. And this is bicycling, by the way, not motorcycle. This is bicycling. I motorcycle also, by the way. And this guy, Johnson, he said, well, how's that company doing? I said, it went under. I said, timing was horrible. It went under. That's just the crash of 2001 or 2002, I said, it just went under. And he says, "Oh, boy, did you lose any money?" I said, "Yeah, about 130, 140,000. He said, "You don't seem very emotional about it." I said, "What for?" He said, "But if I lost $140,000, I would be upset, you know." I said, "That's the way it goes." But you see, the thing is that what he didn't understand is that I have that money to lose. When I invest that money, I say, well, if I lose that, am I going to be thrown out of my house?
You calculate it.
You know, I said, well, it's going to be right. So if I make it, I'm going to make millions. If I lose $130,000, $140,000. I lost it. I recovered. I mean, not that, but I went on in my life. And he just couldn't, and he railed for for weeks after that. He kept on going back.
Well, he did. You
how
did.
Come you not, anyway, but I want to talk about this anarchy. Anarchy is a form of government where our settlers said, we are individuals. Our Constitution says we are individuals, and we have someone on the line, and I just can't believe that on a day like this. This is Lloyd from Henrietta. Okay. Hey, Lloyd, how you doing?
How you doing, Joe? I'll have to disagree with you a little bit. As far as the Constitution goes, I'm for the Constitution in the sense that it's the de jure law of the day.
Okay. Yeah.
But, the real sovereignty existed only as long as we had the Articles of Confederation.
Okay.
And
all right.
And what the Constitution did, it was an agenda. It was creating a nation-state controlled by a central government. In other words, central planning to overrule the states. But under the Articles of Confederation, the states were all individual states.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was the balance. That was the balance.
Yeah, but wasn't this is where Hamilton and Jefferson and those guys, they started duking it out, and they said, look, we're going to have a central form of government, like you said, Lloyd, but we want the states to be sovereign. And so, in a sense, it was sort of a halfway house. Am I off base there, Lloyd, or what?
You're correct in that it was a compromise, but it didn't please. In fact, Patrick Henry, he walked out of the Constitutional Convention, I believe. Now, I know he was opposed to the Constitution because, there were just, if you read the Constitution, you'll find, well, for instance, in Article 1, Section 8 there, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying out the execution
right.
of the foregoing powers. In other words, that's the all-inclusive thing.
Yeah.
Anything the Congress does is going to be law. Now we have the Patriot Act. We have NDAA.
Right.
And you go to Article 6, second paragraph, and the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made pursuant thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. So anything Congress does is going to be the supreme law of the land, and they get to make any laws that they think necessary and proper for carrying out the execution of the foregoing powers.
However, there is a balance with the state sovereignty, and can't the states override? I mean, isn't that what who is it? Levine is promoting? Is it the states?
Oh yeah, well,
can take control and say we're not going to do it anymore.
In some cases, yeah. In many cases, they can do that. But I don't know where it's like.
Throughout our entire history, there's always been forces that are continually trying to consolidate power in this country. Okay, so you start out with the original 13 colonies. Okay, they're all independent colonies. They group together to protect themselves. And then we start adding on more states, and eventually you reach a point where they're coming together, and you're winding up with a situation where the people are slowly giving up their rights for this sense of security that they want to get. Okay, and it's just slowly been eroding. It's like, why did we go ahead and create the Federal Reserve? There was some reason that somebody created. Somebody was afraid that was convinced that the economy was going to go up and down and that it would be more stable with the Federal Reserve. So people gave up rights. And so as we continue to go, we change laws, we change things, we put things in place, and you keep the people pacified. And as long as the people are happy, they don't care what kind of laws you make until the point where you no longer have control.
Lloyd, let me ask you this question. You think we're becoming bifurcated in that, for example, they said the most libertarian city in the United States right now is Detroit because people are taking matters into their own hands. As things get worse, are there going to be more and more people taking matters into their own hands? acting as freemen, if you will.
Free agents.
Okay,
Yeah.
free agents. And then the other half, basically, of those that are on the dole, waiting for the free people to give them money so they can support the government. You see this big bifurcation? You see this happening, or what's your take on it?
Well, I think that's all planned. I think that's what they want. They want, there to be an uprising and such, so that they can have the excuse to come in and put in more martial law controls.
Yeah,
that's all planned. I don't think that's all accident.
Well, that's a good point.
It is all planned.
And as far as you were talking about the states, what about April the 12th, 1861? How did state sovereignty work out there when the states wanted to separate from the Union? If they were sovereign, Lincoln sure put a stop to that.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, through executive privilege.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah. And
executive order.
Yeah, there are people who say, the Civil War was not about slavery, it was about states' rights.
Yeah. I think it was.
Well, it's hard to separate the two. Difficult to separate.
Well, because there were issues of slavery and other things,
right?
But it was about the rights to be
of the states, right?
Yeah, to be sovereign.
And that's another example of distracting people from the true issue. Okay, yes, slavery was bad, but a big thing was the was the states' rights. So you take something as an issue, you make it public, you find something people can get all riled up about. Yeah, it needs to be changed. Okay, it needed to be changed. But at the meantime, same time, you go ahead and you do other things. You take away rights, and what do you wind up? You wind up with now a unified country, okay, where one central force has control over what's going on over the states, and so now the states have fewer rights.
Right.
And they didn't just end slavery. They took away the rights of everybody.
Yeah, I guess the Civil War was actually just testing the whole concept. So it didn't work out, did it?
That's right.
It worked out just the way the Constitution wanted it to work out. The central government took control.
Okay, Lloyd, in 15 seconds, what do you predict? I'm sorry. 15
what?
Where are we going?
On what front?
What do you think is going to happen? You think we're going to become more free or less free, or what?
It's going to be less free, at least for the time being. Yeah, it's going in that direction, and that's the trend. And then after that, maybe after the coming of the Lord or whatever, I think things will work out.
Lloyd, we got to go now. Amen. Okay, thanks for calling in, and have yourself a nice holiday. Okay, you take care.
It's going to take.
All right, guys. This is the end of today's podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for their financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in, folks. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground with that, until next time, I'm Joe Cristiano. This is Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well, stay tuned.